The death toll in the Italian earthquake rises to nearly 250. Rescuers with sniffer dogs are still trying to reach dozens of people believed to be trapped in collapsed buildings.
I have lived through many earthquakes over the years, but one like this one, never. It was long and ugly.
We'll have the latest from Amatrice. Also, this lunchtime. 5 men whose bodies were recovered off Camber Sands yesterday were in their late teens and 20s. Police say they were on a day trip from London. GCSE results show the biggest ever year-on-year decline, blamed on more pupils being required to resit English and maths. A French court is considering whether the controversial so-called ban on burqinis in coastal towns is legal.
Here, it's results day. Pupils from across the south find out how they got on in their GCSEs. And a remake of Ben-Hur in Reading with 70 local performers.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the BBC News at 1. It is now known that at least 247 people were killed in yesterday's earthquake in Italy. More than 360 were injured. Rescuers have been working through the night to try to find survivors. Late last night, a 10-year-old girl was pulled out alive. The earthquake's epicentre was near the town of Nocia there in Umbria. It had a magnitude of 6.2. The tremor was strong enough to be felt up and down the country. Among the worst hit places is Amatrice, considered one of Italy's most beautiful towns. In a moment, we'll speak to our correspondent Jenny Hill, who is there. But first, this report from our correspondent Sarah Campbell.
With every hour that passes, the extent of the devastation wrought by yesterday's earthquake becomes more apparent. This is the small mountain town of Pescara del Tronto, almost entirely reduced to rubble. More than 4,000 rescuers have worked tirelessly to find people still believed to be trapped under the debris.
We worked through the night. The teams didn't stop. We will carry on doing everything. The dogs are playing a vital role. We have 30 dogs combing the rubble to find anyone who is still alive.
Rescuers call for quiet, using listening equipment to detect for any signs of life below. Where they're working is dangerous. The piles of debris are unstable and there have been hundreds of aftershocks. But scenes like this, the rescue of 10-year-old Julia last night, stiffen the resolve of those risking their own lives to help others. In Amatrice, the town clock stopped at the exact time the quake hit. The mayor said that 3/4 of the town's been destroyed and no building is safe now to live in. With no homes to go to, many people spent last night in tents or cars as the relief effort got underway.
I'm really pleased to see that there are tents where people in need can get psychological support. But words aren't the most important thing right now. Where possible, I want to bring emotional support. A sincere hug is probably 1,000 times more effective than words.
Help is on hand. Earthquakes are not uncommon in Italy, but this is the most powerful to hit since 1980, and people are struggling to take in the enormity of what's happened to their communities.
I've lived through many earthquakes. There's an earthquake here every 7 or 8 years, but I've never known one which has lasted for so long or was so bad.
We haven't slept. We are very tired. We do not know how long we'll have to stay here. The rescue services are still getting themselves organised.
I haven't slept a lot because I was really afraid. There was 1.5 minutes of earthquake, but now we're getting used to it. From yesterday, every 2 to 3 minutes there have been aftershocks.
The belief is still very much that survivors will be found. The likelihood is the death toll will continue to rise. Sarah Campbell, BBC News.
Well, we can talk to our correspondent Jenny Hill, who is in Casale near Amatrice, and just give us a sense, Jenny, of what you've witnessed there.
There's almost nothing left. This tiny hamlet contained around 20 houses. There are just 3 left standing. Rescue workers here tell us that 15 people
were killed, among them a family and a couple together with their young grandchild. You can see for yourself the scale of the devastation. It's hard to imagine anyone surviving what's happened here. There are so many scores of hamlets and small villages like this dotted all around this countryside. They're difficult to get to. It's hard to get heavy machinery down to them because they're linked by very small, very winding roads. So it's a very difficult task for the rescue workers. What makes their job even harder, and of course it's extremely distressing, people here were telling us about pulling bodies from the wreckage in the dark. But in addition to that, they're also having to contend with aftershocks. Italian media are reporting that there have been hundreds of aftershocks and earthquakes since that initial large earthquake. We felt them ourselves. They throw you off your feet. They're unnerving for us. But imagine being a rescue worker trying to work in one of those very precarious buildings, which is very, very unstable indeed. It's very dangerous work.
Jenny, thank you. Jenny Hill there, near Amatrice, and our correspondent James Reynolds is also in that area. He's been further into the town to see how the rescue work is progressing.
This is the centre of Amatrice, and the devastation here is astonishing. Just looking on this side of the road, there's almost nothing left of this house. It's barely possible to make out who might have lived here, what kind of possessions and what kind of life they lived. And there's a rescue carrying on up here, or at least the authorities hope that it's a rescue. I just spoke to a fireman who says that they are still looking for people in this house. There's almost nothing left of the house, and so firemen are leading that rescue. They're digging away the rubble. There's a crowd watching on the other side, and then the firemen on top of the rubble there will try to see if there's anyone still alive underneath what used to be a house.
James Reynolds there in Amatrice, and you can keep up to date with all the efforts to find and help survivors of that earthquake on the BBC News website, bbc.co.uk/news. Police say 5 men who died in the sea off Camber Sands in East Sussex yesterday were on a day trip from London. 3 men were pulled from the sea during the afternoon and 2 bodies were found on the beach last night. Our correspondent Duncan Kennedy is there. Duncan.
Well, Jane, this is a tragedy, in the words of the police, one that has absolutely stunned everybody you speak to here. It's been called a very safe beach with hardly any accidents over the past 10 years. But as you said, 5 young friends came here yesterday to enjoy a day at the seaside, and all 5 have now lost their lives. It's led to calls this morning for people who come to beaches to learn how to swim and to be aware of riptides. After the trauma of yesterday, families slowly return to the beach today, but this time stunned by the events on these vast, wide, glistening sands. Many wary of how such beauty can conceal so much unseen danger.
Just shocking, isn't it, really? You just have to be very vigilant with your children and that, and everyone else, and just pay attention to what you're being told with the riptides, etc.
I didn't sleep all night. Whole night I was just walking around in the bedroom. I couldn't sleep.
Did you think twice about coming back today?
Yeah, we did. And for my niece, it's her first time. She wanted to go to the beach.
25,000 people were on the beach yesterday when the 5 men lost their lives. Police say they were all friends from London in their late teens or early 20s and had come for a day of swimming at the seaside. There are no lifeguards on duty here, and it seems the young men may have had difficulty swimming and been unaware of the riptides that can swirl around sections of this foreshore.
This beach is safe. It is actually looking at, when you're looking at people coming to the beach, they need to know about beach safety, the safety of the sea. You shouldn't go into the sea if you can't swim. So I think it's more about prevention.
Last month, another man died on this coastline, a stretch of beach that looks so seductive, but which police and Coast Guard say can be unpredictable. The police aren't saying what they think caused this tragedy, but a clue may lie in the extreme tidal movements here on Camber Sands. This is the high tide mark, but look out there. Almost 200 metres away is the low tide mark, and it may just be that the men were caught when that tide came rushing back in. The Home Secretary, Amber Rudd, is the local MP and has offered her condolences to the men's families. Friends of the men have also posted their reactions online, with one saying, "You were truly a good person with a good heart." Well, a petition has now been signed by more than 4,000 people calling for a lifeguard to be permanently stationed on this beach. We'll never know, of course, whether a lifeguard would have made a difference yesterday. It may just be that these men died trying to save each other.
Duncan, thank you. Duncan Kennedy there in East Sussex. More than 500,000 teenagers in England, Wales and Northern Ireland got their GCSE results this morning. For the first time, it includes tens of thousands of students in England who had to resit English and maths, having failed to reach a grade C last year. And that has led to a big fall in results. Our education correspondent, Gillian Hargreaves, reports.
5 years of secondary education comes to this. 240 students waiting for their GCSEs at St Leonard's Academy. For 16-year-olds Zach and Rhiannon, these GCSE results will decide where they go next.
I got an A in maths, a B in English, a B in further science, a in resistant materials.
Are you happy with all that?
Yeah, I passed everything as well, so great.
I got a B in my retake English. I got a B in English literature, a B in further science.
You retook your English to try and get a higher grade. How's that worked out for you?
I got the same outcome grade, but I don't mind. It's still a good grade to pass with, and I'm proud of it.
Retakes, especially among older candidates, have had a significant effect this year. The overall pass rate has dropped by 2.1 percentage points. That's the lowest figure for 10 years. In part, this has been caused by a 25% increase in the number of 17-year-olds retaking English and maths in England. In Wales, the results are broadly similar to last year. 66% of candidates got an A star to C. Although the pupils here have done exceptionally well, the government says too many 16-year-olds are failing to get that all-important grade C in English and maths, which is why the rules have been changed so that older teenagers at 17 and 18 have to retake those qualifications until they pass.
We don't apologise for that, because this means that tens of thousands of 17-year-olds who in the past had not been able to obtain a C or better in their GCSEs in English and maths, we are encouraging and doing everything we can to help those young people. Something Michael knows only too well. He's 20 and still studying for his GCSEs.
You crack on with your GCSEs, otherwise you're going to be doing them at my age, like 20. I'm still trying, well, I'm doing my maths now, but it is so much better just to get them over and done with.
But today's fall in the pass rate has prompted teaching unions to question whether it's right to compel teenagers who are struggling to pass GCSEs to continue retaking them. Gillian Hargreaves, BBC News.
Children's A&E services at a hospital in Stafford have been suspended by NHS managers. The County Hospital Children's Emergency Centre has been deemed clinically unsafe because of a lack of specialist staff. Let's find out more from our health correspondent, Dominic Hughes. What's behind this decision, Dominic?
Well, in essence, Jane, it relates to an inability by this hospital, which was known as the Mid Staffordshire Hospital, and viewers may remember that hospital had a very troubled history when poor care there was linked to the deaths of hundreds of mainly elderly patients. But this hospital has consistently struggled to recruit staff, not just in children's services, but across the board. And that's what lies behind this decision. They cannot get the highly specialised staff to run this children's emergency centre. Now, it was set up in May 2015, and ever since then, emergency cases, blue light ambulance cases, have been taken to neighbouring hospitals, for example, in Stoke or in Wolverhampton or in Burton-on-Trent. But they say that now they're closing that unit because they can't get the staff to look after those walk-in cases. So the advice for parents is if your child is ill, take them to your local GP, or if it's an emergency, call 999 as you would have. And then, as has happened over the last 3 years or so, couple of years, the children will be taken by ambulance if they're very ill to the neighbouring hospitals.
Dominic, thank you. Dominic Hughes. The Yorkshire Ripper, Peter Sutcliffe, has been transferred from Broadmoor Psychiatric Hospital in Berkshire to Frankland Prison in County Durham. Peter Sutcliffe was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia after being jailed for life in 1981 for the murder of 13 women and the attempted murder of 7 more. The number of people migrating to Britain has fallen slightly to 327,000 in the year to March. But the difference between the number of people coming here and those leaving is 3 times the government's target figure. Our Home Affairs correspondent Tom Simons has been looking at these figures and so still not hitting targets, Tom.
That's right, Jane. I mean, this figure, 327,000, is the crucial headline figure. Just to restate, it represents the difference between the number of people coming in and the number of people leaving. It's plus 327,000. And it's barely changed statistically, and that's a problem for the government because they want it to be coming down. And it's not changed because of an increase in the number of people coming from Romania and Bulgaria, and that's offsetting a small decrease in the numbers coming from other parts of Europe and from outside Europe. But it does mean the government is missing really by a mile its target to reduce the net migration figure, that figure not from 327,000 down to less than 100,000. And the government says that's a target that is not going away.
That is still absolutely the target, and indeed we've already made a lot of progress in terms of the way that we manage immigration. For example, we've closed down 900 bogus colleges, many of them language colleges that were getting people in through the back door. We've clamped down on sham marriages and changed the way that people can apply for benefits in this country as well. So, you know, we have done a lot over recent years.
Some other interesting points in these figures this morning. Now, for the first time, there are more Polish-born people in Britain than any other nationality, including the previous high, which was Indian. And also, because immigrants tend to be younger when they come to Britain, they are now having babies at a greater rate than the rest of us who are born here, which is going to be interesting in the future as well. And finally, that long-term immigration from outside Europe, which is the bit the government can control, is still higher than that from inside Europe. And what these figures don't tell us is what's happened since the Brexit vote. That may change things. Immigrants might feel they don't want to come here because of the uncertainty, but we're not going to see figures about that until early next year, Jane.
All right, Tom, thank you. Tom Simons. And the time is 17 minutes past 1, the reminder of our top story this lunchtime. The death toll in the Italian earthquake has risen to nearly 250. Rescuers are still trying to reach dozens of people believed to be trapped in collapsed buildings. And coming up, the driverless taxi that's taken to the streets of Singapore.
In South today at 1:30.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Pupils from the South find out how they got on in their GCSEs. And a remake of Ben-Hur in Reading with 70 local performers.
Nigel Farage, the former leader of UKIP, has addressed a rally in Mississippi for the Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump. Mr. Trump told supporters that British people had voted to take back control of immigration, the economy and government, and said he is raising similar issues in his campaign. Nigel Farage said he wouldn't tell American people how to vote, but stressed that they could beat the pollsters, the commentators and Washington. Our correspondent David Willis reports.
A man who led brilliantly the United Kingdom Independence Party
into the carnival-like atmosphere of one of the most unconventional presidential campaigns of all time came the man from Kent.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Nigel Farage.
One of them got the stage directions wrong, but these men are facing the same direction on all the big issues of the day. And they believe the waves of political revolution that brought about the Brexit vote may soon be washing up on this side of the pond as well.
I come to you from the United Kingdom with a message of hope and a message of optimism. It's a message that says if the little people, if the real people, if the ordinary decent people are prepared to stand up and fight for what they believe in, we can overcome the big banks. We can overcome the multinationals.
Donald Trump has demonised those same institutions, appealing, as Nigel Farage did, to the disillusioned and the disenfranchised, and to those anxious for tighter immigration laws. Mr Farage criticised President Obama for taking sides in the British referendum and said that as a foreigner, it wasn't his place to tell people here how to vote.
But I will say this, if I was an American citizen, I wouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton if you paid me. In fact, I wouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton if she paid me.
The day that Britain voted to leave the EU, Donald Trump was touching down in Scotland on a visit to one of his golf courses, and he welcomed the outcome enthusiastically.
You're taking your country back. You're going to let people that you want into your country.
Trump is trailing in the opinion polls, but as Nigel Farage pointed out, if Brexit taught us anything, it was that the polls can't always be trusted. He called on Republicans to form what he called a people's army in order to get out the vote. The Trump campaign believes it enjoys considerable support from so-called undercover voters, people who are shy about manifesting their support for such a controversial candidate to pollsters, but who, once in the privacy of the voting booth, will do just that. They say, if nothing else, the Brexit vote shows the importance of taking Donald Trump seriously. David Willis, BBC News, Washington.
Human rights groups are at France's highest administrative court today to try to get the so-called burqini ban overturned. A ban on conspicuous religious clothing has been in force in a number of French coastal towns this summer and has been controversial. The debate escalated yesterday when pictures emerged of armed police forcing a woman on a beach in Nice to remove a tunic she was wearing. Our Paris correspondent Hugh Schofield reports.
High summer in Cannes, sun and sand, and this woman is breaking the law. On this beach, police on patrol have imposed fines on women wearing just this kind of get-up. Not the burqini, but then the rule doesn't mention the burqini. It bans beachwear that offends against public manners and secularity. In nearby Nice, it's one such encounter with police that set not just France but the world talking. A woman apparently told to remove part of her clothing in order to comply with public manners.
Leaving aside the rights and wrongs of this new rule, one of the most striking things about it surely is its absurdity. I mean, a woman in full Islamic head and body covering down here on the beach is in breach of the law. But if she takes just a few steps, comes up this path onto the esplanade, she's back doing nothing wrong again.
Muslims in France feel picked out and picked on. Leaders have met with the government to express their anxiety. Does it mean, they ask, that soon other parts of France will be off limits to observant women? But in Cannes, most people are clearly in favour of the ban, which they point out is only temporary and came after the Nice attack.
Women who wear bikinis don't hurt anyone, but it's a provocation. They are trying to impose something that is contrary to French traditions.
I'm for the ban. Bikinis were creating conflicts here. There's been a lot of unease in France since the attacks. There was a real risk people would start fighting on the beaches.
Outside France, many people are outraged at what they see as inexplicable state interference into personal behaviour. Here in France, it's more complicated. Here, the burqini debate is a clash of something that the French find it very hard to let go of: big ideas. Hugh Schofield, BBC News, Cannes.
Here, MPs have accused social media companies of consciously failing to combat extremist groups. The Home Affairs Select Committee says firms such as Facebook, Twitter and Google, which owns YouTube, are leaving parts of the internet ungoverned. But the companies insist they are taking their responsibilities seriously. Our Home Affairs correspondent Dominic Casciani has joined me. So what more is the committee saying, Dominic?
Jane, this is a really quite scathing report. In essence, what the MPs say is these major social media firms are effectively a vehicle of choice for propaganda, recruiting platforms for terrorism. It says that they are reaping billions in revenue and not pouring enough of this into actually combating online extremism, and where they are doing it, they're not being clear enough about what they're actually achieving. I'll give an example. During the recent trial of the hate preacher Anjem Chowdhury, it emerged that police had tried to get some of his material recently removed, and some of that is still online today. And that's why MPs say they want to see these companies working much more closely with police and be much more effective in doing these kind of takedowns, which they say are essential to public safety.
Right, so what are the companies themselves saying to this?
Privately, a lot of social media companies are absolutely furious with the MPs. They feel this report is misleading and misrepresents a lot of hard work they've been doing over the last couple of years to really up their game. And if you look at some of the figures around this, it's quite interesting. Twitter, in the last year, has taken down more than 360,000 extreme accounts. In fact, last week, Washington, the US administration, praised its efforts. Facebook says that it takes down terrorist accounts where it finds them and investigates the wider network. And Google, YouTube says it has a system of, for want of a better expression, hunter-killers in the community who are experts at finding this material for them. What they say overall is, look, a lot has changed, but we cannot do this alone. There is so much material there. It's a big, big social problem.
Dominic, thank you. Dominic Casciani. After nearly 50 years of conflict, the Colombian government and the left-wing guerrilla group FARC have agreed a peace deal. More than 260,000 people have been killed in that time and an estimated 7 million internally displaced. A referendum on the deal is due to be held in October. Our correspondent Natalio Cosoy reports from Bogotá.
After many years of fighting, kidnapping and war, and 4 years of negotiations with the FARC rebels, Colombia's president finally had some good news.
Hoy podemos decir, por fin, que todo.
Today we can finally say that everything is agreed upon. Thanks to the titanic efforts of the delegations at the negotiating table, the final pending matters were agreed upon.
The conflict, which began in 1964, has killed more than 260,000 people, uprooted almost 7 million and left 45,000 missing. The illegal trade in cocaine has fueled the conflict, partly funding the FARC rebels and drawing other groups into one of the world's more protracted conflicts. In the country's capital city, Bogotá, Colombians took to the streets to celebrate the historic peace deal.
This announcement is very important for us Colombians. Most of us were born in a country at war, and this offers a ray of hope. When looking at a terrible past, it offers the chance of a bright future.
It's very moving. My father and grandparents have been victims of the violence. Giving ourselves a chance as a society is very exciting.
Everyone here is a firm supporter of the peace process, but there are many in Colombia who are wary of these agreements and think they will carry a great deal of impunity for FARC rebels. It will be people like them, but also people like the ones here, who will decide in a popular vote in October if they approve the agreements and there is finally peace with the FARC in Colombia. For now, roughly 7,000 remaining FARC guerrillas who live in the jungles and plains of the Andes are resting their guns. And after half a century of war, the oldest insurgent group in Latin America is beginning to enjoy other pursuits. Natalio Cosoy, BBC News, Bogotá.
Now, self-driving cars are the talk of the motor industry at the moment, with manufacturers trying to grab the headlines with every technological advance. Well, today in Singapore, you can in fact hop into a driverless taxi and go for a ride. It's even free, but it is still only a trial, as Ashley Niem reports from Singapore.
It's not a ghost driving, as one passenger described it. It's driverless. Well, kind of. The guy in the driver's seat is just there in case anything goes wrong. For now, only one car is being road tested, but it's hoped there'll soon be 6. So how does it work? Commuters can book a taxi ride using their smartphone, but we weren't able to travel inside because safety, they say, is their first concern. Still, the company insists the car is safe.
The computers react far faster than a human will. Humans' reaction times have been 0.25 seconds, and we can actually react far faster than that, from seeing an object, deciding what to do, and then applying the brakes. And so right now, I would say that the car is certainly are going to be more safe around pedestrians than most humans.
What if the car malfunctions?
We have an extensive health monitoring system in the car that monitors not only the computers, the sensors, the actual cabin of the car to make sure everything is as we expect. And if there's a problem, it lets us know.
In Singapore, where taxis crowd the roads, keeping thousands of drivers employed, unsurprisingly, some are a bit worried.
Of course I'm scared. If this is expanded, then something bad's bound to happen. And when it does, who'll handle the mess?
They have to drive at a certain speed, and also there's a lot of changes on the road. Sometimes cyclists jump in front and things like that. So I don't know. I don't think the technology is that good.
While they might dismiss it now, Newtonomy claims a fully fledged paid service without drivers could be a reality within 2 years. Ashley Neem, BBC News, Singapore.
Well, let's catch up with the weather prospects, shall we? John Hammond has joined me. Hello.
Jane, variety is the name of the game. We've got plenty of that in the next 2.5 minutes. Let me start off in the northwest of Scotland. Beautiful start to the day here in sunny Benbecula. Mind you, it wasn't all that warm, and across Scotland and Northern Ireland we've missed out on the real heat in recent days. Pleasant enough though in the sunshine. The heat has been the other side of this cloud in the southeast, of course, joining much of continental Europe. In fact, it's been a case of the great European bake-off this week, with temperatures widely up into the 30s. Now, where the warm meets the cool, the atmosphere is often quite volatile, and that's the case at the moment. We've got thick cloud and we've got pulses of rain pushing up from the near continent through parts of the West Country, the Midlands, Wales and into northern England. That similar sort of zone will be affected by outbreaks of rain through this afternoon. Again, the dividing line between that very warm, muggy air across the southeast, much cooler, fresher conditions to the north and the west. I want to concentrate on this zone because by the time we get into late afternoon, early evening, some really nasty downpours are possible. Again, in that zone from the West Country, parts of Wales, the Midlands, towards some northern and eastern counties of England. Very hit and miss, but the storms could be nasty. Warnings have been issued, and this zone will track its way a little bit further eastwards through the night. Meanwhile, some heavy downpours brush through Northern Ireland and into western Scotland for a time later on tonight. But in between, it'll be a quieter end to the night. Cool and fresh across the north and west, but a very steamy night again across the southeast, 17, 18 degrees in the larger towns and cities. Could be the odd rumble of thunder first thing in the morning across the southeast, the odd splash of rain. That won't hang around though, it'll clear through. The sun comes out. Going to be a beautiful day for most of us on Friday. Some showers, some breezy conditions across the north and west of Scotland, keeping it cool here. Further south, pleasantly warm, but we'll have lost that oppressive heat across the East Anglia and the southeast. What about the weekend? Well, a bit of a headache. It all hinges on this frontal system pushing up from the south, and its exact location will be pivotal to the weather, because along that zone we could well see some heavy, slow-moving downpours developing, tracking slowly northwards through England and Wales. Where that parks itself is still a little bit uncertain, but watch this space. Again, warnings have been issued to the south of that. If it brightens up, it'll feel quite pleasant. But that zone, slow moving, it's still there as we go from Saturday into Sunday. So again, watch this space. Some really nasty downpours. On either side of that, it will be drier on Sunday. Quite breezy conditions, but again in the south, in the sunshine, it'll feel quite pleasant. Cooler across the northwest, and where it's raining all day, obviously it'll feel pretty unpleasant. At long last, that low pressure drifts out of the way as we start the bank holiday. It's looking good with a reach of high pressure building in. And for most of us, I think on Bank Holiday Monday, it'll look a little bit like this.
Fingers crossed. Thank you very much, John Hammond. Thank you. And just a reminder of our top story this lunchtime. The death toll in the Italian earthquake has risen to nearly 250. Rescuers are still trying to reach dozens of people believed to be trapped in collapsed buildings. That is all from us for now. Now on BBC One, it's time for the news wherever you are. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.